So this is a video that I did a few years back where I had a site plan, really a cartoon that I did of a site BMP, that's a best management practice, or a pond for stormwater facility for basically letting the pollutant settle and all that stuff. That was the main premise of the project, was trying to go after the project through a proposal. And this was an exhibit that we used, and the engineer used, that I was working for, used to try to solicit the project. And this is kind of an interesting endeavor. It was largely a big site that was almost the entire thing to be consumed with the pond. So trying to tie in some recreational elements around it and make it a little bit more than just a big hole in the ground. So that's what we tried to do, and I conceptualized the plan with the island in the middle and these trails connecting to it. It seemed like the Parks and Rec department wanted something interesting and other criteria that they wanted to meet other than just stormwater. So took a very conceptual plan, threw it into a Photoshop program, and on top of an aerial of the site, tried to line the two up and then start carving in with just raw digital paint through Photoshop using a Wacom tablet. And so you can see me arranging different things and zooming in and out and trying to fluff in some shadows and painting over elements in the plan just to have another layer of controllability. And I'm using a kind of a textured brush with the Wacom, and you can see I've got several layers in here, some for shadows, some for highlights. Right now I'm doing the shadows. You can see as the layer kind of parts on occasion here. And so really just ballooning that stuff in based on what I know about things that I've already drawn and trying to make them appear 3D. And of course we're softening this into an aerial image that already exists, so trying to color match that was also important. And then looking at atmospheric perspective, trying to dim back the horizon was also important. You'll see that in a second too. So there's a pavilion at the middle of the pond that stems off the building. You'll see that come into play soon. Just for now left a big gap in there. Try to get the water to look more like the muddy version of water, which is not really true blue. It's more of a kind of a brown color, but tried to mimic and mirror some of the sky reflecting off that. If it's not blue, people don't seem to understand it. So put in the highlights here. You can see the highlights are basically kind of a warm color on a hard light layer that's set down to maybe a 50 or 60% opacity, and just painting in the sunlight. So this is done after the shadows, after the local color on all the trees and objects are done. And all the flickering is me trying to look at the color of the highlights and making sure that it's coming in and working out. So you see the atmosphere. It is trying to get that ghostly southern humidity coming in there, and then selectively erasing parts of that just to reveal a little more clarity on the design. And then I do play with some gradient overlays, which some of the stock overlays that Photoshop has, to try to bring out some color and some interest into the project. I'm trying to get some of the sheen on the water with the brush, bring in some interest. And sometimes you'll see in this video where I'm flipping the screen back and forth, mirroring it back and forth just to check the right left hand bias And then of course I'm also turning off the color and showing the opacity, just to allow the values to be more evident, and so I can bounce it out. So also trying to add some areas and pockets where light might shoot through the trees. It's not a great job at that, but just trying to get a little bit more visual interest into the scene. And you'll see me scratch in some kind of texture on this roof for this other building. This was in addition to a school building. I think it was a school building. I can't remember at this point, but really just trying to obscure it because it's such a dominant piece of the image. And you'll see me add trees in a little bit that will cover the side. So I'm just trying to make that structure mute out a little bit and focus on the landscape. Occasionally you'll see me adding this transparent black layer underneath everything so that I can a little bit more clearly see and focus on what I'm doing. Some of the colors were just blending in, and I was getting a little lazy, just wanted to make sure I could see that clear without having to fart around with colors. Adding in detail where detail might be important, and some of this is just like sketching and scratching in a few plants, just trying to give the illusion of a planted landscape, which looks a lot different from the concept, of course. Mostly just cleaning up on the edges, trying to get the fringe of the material just to look like it's something going on there. You can see me flipping the canvas again just to fix some of the left-right bias, balancing out with some of the trees just to close the view. And then I'm just kind of doing a quick check on overall composition, the lines that are leading to the focus, and now I'm scratching in the structure for the little gazebo pavilion out there at the edge of the lake. Recording doesn't have all the menus that pop up in Photoshop. I don't know why, but the particular recorder I was using only captured the screen, what was on it, not any fly out boxes or dialog boxes that popped up, so sorry for that. you're not probably missing too much. I wanted to give a little bit more texture to this roof job here, and some kind of shingles or something, so you'll see some of that. It does kind of almost go away though as I dim it back. Trying to master the selections is really a huge deal. If you can understand how to select properly and mask and inverse your selection and isolate and do little tricks with the layers in terms of selecting what's on the layer, all that stuff becomes very important for getting you expedited through something like this to make it go a lot quicker. At some point you're going to see me add some people in here, and I just grabbed something off the internet that just had an array of people scattered throughout, and I just used them for reference and kind of blobbed over them and just picked and chose the ones I wanted. This island out here has got some kind of, I don't know, some vertical color banners or blades or something plastic maybe that's hollow and lit up, some composite materials of some sort. I'm just trying to balance something modern out there that give a little bit of pizzazz to it. And then you'll see a lot of the boardwalk elements, whether it's crossing over to the island or the boardwalk through the wetlands area on the right side of the image. Just trying to make some area of interest. It's kind of a Parks and Rec kind of thing, so there's going to be some educational elements here. Children looking down and looking at the lily pads and the frogs, maybe some turtles. And there is a horticultural garden that's kind of that eye-shaped thing about right of middle in the painting across from the island. Checking the values, trying to make that foreground building mute out as much as possible. Generally speaking, if you convert this to black and white or put a mask over it to see that, you'll know if it's working for you. Black and white, it should read just fine as an image. If it doesn't read well in black and white and it's too light or too dark or maybe even just too monotonously gray across the entire image, then you know you're not accomplishing what you need to. shows the concept before I started going on top. It's important to have some details in the foreground because you want to have some visual interest there, of course, but it's also a bit of a scaling issue. If you can show some elements that are familiar to people in a landscape like this, you start to get a sense of the scale. There's those people. In many cases they're just squiggles. The ones that are far away are just paint dabs, really. It's only when you start getting close in the foreground where the real details sort of matter. You can see me grabbing the detail of people. I just need the silhouette, and mostly I'll paint in my own details. I'll warp them, I'll change them up, and given the resolution of this thing and how kind of sloppy and more of a modern impressionist that it is, you'll see me just kind of throw some paint over top of them. And I've done this in several ways. Sometimes I'll isolate the layer, and you can see me making a dynamics color adjustment on the brush so that every time you paint with it, it changes color. You can do that in your brush setting very easily under color dynamics and ratchet up the hue to a high percentage of variability. So every time you paint a stroke, it's a completely different color. So I did that to very quickly get a variety of colors on these people. Not with a whole lot of accuracy, but just enough to convey what's going on. Here now you can see me dropping in some kind of guardrail around this thing just so that people aren't taking a dive off of it. And here's the finished piece. I know it was used. I know we actually did not get the project, but